So 3.5 liter EcoBoost powered F150 owners, listen up, because today we are talking about one of the easiest and one of the most affordable ways to make some pretty good performance gains on your truck. I'm talking about colder intakes like K&N's Series 63 AirCharger that we just threw on our truck today. Now, if you've been hunting for easy power, you've probably seen that whole back and forth, that age-old discussion, if you will, about colder intakes and what kind of performance gains they provide. And what's cool about the EcoBoost in particular is the fact that it runs off of a speed density setup instead of a mass airflow sensor. Without getting into the science, guys, it's pretty straightforward. As far as the EcoBoost is concerned, you can throw pretty much any intake on this truck. You don't have to tune it or dyno it, and the speed density system will automatically make changes to air and fuel on the fly, essentially tuning itself, and that's where you get those pretty good performance gains from. Now, as far as what kind of performance gains you guys can expect, well, I would say that conservatively, you will expect a single-digit to low double-digit gains, and again, that's without any tuning or dynoing whatsoever. Now, if you're curious about which intake you should go for, I generally lump them into two categories. You got closed element designs, which are very similar to the factory setup, and then you got these cool open element designs like the Series 63. So which intake should you go with? Well, a closed element design like the one that comes on the truck is not going to look as good as an open element design, but theoretically it might provide that colder and denser air to the engine compared to an open element design, and therefore you might make some better power with a closed element design. However, open element designs obviously look a lot better, and that's the case with the Series 63. We're ditching that really ugly factory intake tube in favor of a kind of OEM in appearance plastic tube with a really nice textured finish on it. If you guys own an XL truck or one of the base models with the black trim on it, this matches very closely, so it looks good, but it's still an obvious upgrade. Really cleans up the looks underneath the hood. But what I like about this one in particular is the way K&N designed it. We're actually retaining the factory air inlet, which does an excellent job in my mind, and we're also reusing the bottom of our factory air box. K&N went ahead and fabbed up a new heat shield, which is still fully enclosed with the hood down, so you pretty much get the best of both worlds. When you got the hood up, looks great. You can see that high flow filter going to work, and you can also see if it needs to be cleaned or not. But with the hood down, it's pretty much a closed element design, so you get that colder, denser air, and you make all that good power that you're hunting for. And obviously, next you have to consider price. And guys, this one's pretty straightforward. If you want one of the most affordable intakes, then the Series 63 is going to be the ticket. This guy comes in right under the $300 price point, and anything that's going to cost less than this is typically only going to be a replacement tube or a replacement filter. You're not going to get both, and you're probably not going to be getting a new heat shield either. So again, most affordable, complete intake that you can pick up. And as far as the install is concerned, it's very straightforward. I'm actually going to give this a 1 out of 3 wrenches on my patented difficulty meter, and I wager it'll take you guys about 30 minutes to an hour, and that's even if you don't have any experience turning wrenches. Like I said, it's a great first mod. And if you decide to pull the trigger on this intake, you can actually come back to this video in just a bit. I'm going to show you guys exactly what tools you need to pull out of that toolbox, and I'm going to walk you through the entire install step by step. All right, guys, to install your intake, you're going to need a 4mm Allen key as well as a standard drive ratchet, and you'll also need 7 and 8mm sockets. Optional but helpful tools for those band clamps include some long extensions. All right, guys, so obviously you got to make sure your hood is open, and then we can remove that factory intake. You're really only going to need a couple tools for this. Specifically, you'll need a 7mm socket for those band clamps securing our factory intake tubes. It's also very helpful to have yourself a nice long extension because one of those band clamps is tucked down pretty far. I'll show you where both of those are. All right, so that first band clamp is located just behind the coolant reservoir right here. All you need to do is loosen this up enough so that we can separate this rubber coupler from our intake tubes. All right, that next band clamp is a little bit tucked in here next to all these breather lines and whatnot, so it's very helpful to have that large extension like I said a moment ago. All right, now that our intake tube is separated, we're going to go ahead and disconnect this little sensor located on the back here. This is just held into a rubber grommet, so all you got to do is twist it in order to release it. All right, the last step here is removing both of these little clamps right here, securing our factory air box to the bottom of our air box. Go ahead and pop those free. You can remove the entire intake as one piece. All right, so we have our factory intake removed. I really wanted to take the time to show you guys a good comparison between the two, and more importantly, I wanted to show you what a nice upgrade the new K&N filter is over this factory paper element. For lack of better phrasing, this thing's kind of crappy. Even out of the factory, it's very restrictive. It doesn't let the EcoBoost breathe as well as it should. And as you can see, our truck doesn't have many miles on it, but this thing doesn't really stay clean for very long. So we're gonna ditch old and busted here. We got our new hotness with this new high flow filter. This is good for up to 100,000 miles, and it's actually washable and reusable. So anytime you take your truck off road, or you've been on the daily commute for a while, you start to get a rough idle, something like that, go ahead and throw this thing under some hot water and some mild soap, let it dry off, throw it back in, and you should be good to go. go. Now before we install our new intake system, we have to do a little bit of a setup here. You do have some weather stripping provided in the kit. It might be assembled on the heat shield already. If not, simply press it down on there, make sure it's good and snug. And you also got to get the rubber couplers on your intake tubes with the band clamps like so. The last thing that we really have to do is throw on this plastic coupler so that we can secure our new air filter to our heat shield. For that, you're going to need a small 4mm Allen key, and you'll also need these little Allen head bolts provided in the kit. Okay, so to throw the plastic coupler in place, pretty straightforward. You got a couple of pre-drilled holes in the coupler itself. Those are threaded. You're going to line up those threaded holes with the pre-drilled holes in the new heat shield. Go ahead and hand tighten these little button head bolts on there, and then you can drive them home with that little 4mm Allen key. Okay, with that coupler installed, you can go ahead and throw on the air filter itself. Pretty straightforward stuff. Want to make sure you have that large band clamp on there so you can secure it, and you're actually stepping up your socket size to an 8mm from a 7mm. Okay, our air filter is all set up, we're all ready to go. Again, make sure you got all those rubber couplers and band clamps on your intake tube right here. I'll go ahead and meet you guys over the truck. I'll show you how to get this bolted down. Okay, so you got some tongues on our new heat shield here. Those line up with these holes in the factory air box. So go ahead and line those up. And then once you got the top of the new heat shield flushed, you can reinstall it using these provided clips. Okay, with the heat shield secured, we can throw our new intake tube in place. Again, make sure you got those band clamps on all the ends of those rubber couplers so you can tighten those down once you've lined these up. And you really want to make sure that these rubber couplers are fully seated on the intake tube, otherwise you will have an air leak. Okay, now that our intake tube is secured, all our rubber couplers are lined up and nice and flush. We can tighten down all these band clamps. Again, you'll need an 8mm socket to tighten these clamps down. All right, the last step here is reconnecting this little sensor in the back of our intake tube. Now this rubber grommet can be a little bit of a squeeze, so it's very helpful to spray it down with some WD-40 or some PB Blaster. All right, so once you got those band clamps tightened down and you got your sensor plugged in, that'll wrap up this very easy install, like I said. And that also wraps up my review of K&N Series 63 AirCharger high-performance colder intake, fitting your 2017 or newer 3.5-liter EcoBoost powered F150. Be sure to check it more out on the site, and for all things F150, keep it right here at AmericanTrucks.com.